Welcome back. So in light of the hockey guy uploading his review from last night onto my channel because he broke it, I don't know how, I might as well talk today about baseball since baseball is officially back. And it's going to be interesting to see how this 5-year deal plays itself out. Because I look at the deal and I'm thinking, I don't see a big shift. Like there's a shift here. The players got some concessions, but again, it feels like they're kind of kicking the can down the road. Hopefully, we see a better relationship between the players and the owners. Hopefully, the joint commission or committee for competition will help. This is definitely a broken relationship that they salvaged. They avoid losing any games. Now, what's funny is the commissioner told us 2 weeks ago that we were going to lose games. That's it. That's the deadline. That's it. That's it. It's like that parent, that's like, hey, you say that one more time, no, seriously, you get one, no, that's your last warning. Hey, I'm serious. You don't want to know, Buster, what's going to happen if you do, don't you dare, don't you, all right, now you forced me to do something and I don't know what it's going to be. And that's how it feels to me. So they salvage a 162 game season. They do lose part of their training camp or spring training for the pitchers and catchers. And yeah, so we still get 162 games. The playoff teams will increase from 10 to 12. This gives owners extra revenues. It waters things down. And when you've already got a 162 game schedule, having extra teams in the playoffs may generate more revenue and interest. But I don't know, you're really risking some pretty mediocre teams potentially getting into the playoffs. And I can't wait till that happens and a really mediocre team wins the World Series. Now, that being said, even when we just had the 4 division winners who won and got to face off and then decide who goes to the World Series, there were years where one division would have 3 really good teams and then the winner of the other division, that was great. But there is no perfect playoff system, and so hopefully this is the end of the expansion of the playoffs. It's a 30-team league, so having 12 teams in, again, like I said, there's a better chance for some mediocrity getting in there. The minimum, I can talk. The minimum salary goes from $500 to $700,000 this year. I'm really honestly surprised that the minimum salary in baseball is so much lower than hockey. The NHL's minimum salary this year is $750,000. They get to $780,000 at the end of this deal. So it is remarkable. And that's part of what the problem is with baseball. You have guys making tons of money, and then you have other guys making less than $600,000. And while that's a lot of money to you and I, for a professional athlete and at a baseball level, it has to be frustrating to be a guy making less than $1 million, go out there and play just as well as somebody who's making 8, 9, 10 million. It has to be somewhat frustrating. So, and again, your top tier guys get so much money. The luxury tax goes from $210 to $230 million, which will not have any impact on like Kansas City or the small market teams, but it means that the big market teams can spend more. I sometimes look at the luxury tax and I think it's kind of a joke. And I've seen people talk about maybe bringing it into hockey. I'd really rather that the NHL didn't ever adopt a luxury tax, because it doesn't dissuade other teams from spending exorbitant amounts that the small market teams cannot afford to spend. So you still end up with small market teams getting these players ready. And then when they're really becoming star players, off to the Yankees, off to Boston, maybe the Dodgers, because they can afford to spend that amount of money and they'll just pay the luxury tax. No big deal. They've got the best players. They don't care about having to pay the luxury tax. So what's interesting is the executive board for the players voted unanimously against it. They did not want to ratify this deal. But the players on each team, so you have your vote within the team, 26 teams voted in favor, 4 teams voted against. On the owner's side, all 30 owners were in favor, which tells me this is a deal that really helps owners. It doesn't help players nearly as much. That's what that tells me. If the executive board's like, this is bad, and the players are like, look, we just want to play, so we're going to vote in favor of this, owners win, which is usually what happens when we look back on deals. It's a 5-year deal, so again, we'll be coming back in 5 years. We'll act surprised when they don't get along. I'm hoping that that's something that changes. But at the end of any CBA, you're going to have some static between the players and the owners. The Ideally, the situation you want to see is where there is some financial help towards players if they promote the game and the league gets bigger. And I understand that, like, we've already got like guys making tons of money, so that's kind of already in place. But when you have them business partners, I honestly think that helps. And I think if you have a situation where the mistrust on both the owner side and the player side is at least dulled somewhat, we don't have to go through this level of drama and back and forth that we've seen. Universal DH is coming in. So if you're a National League fan and if you don't like the DH rule, well, it doesn't seem to matter. Draft lottery is coming in for top 6 teams. If your team misses the playoffs, if they're one of the 18 teams that miss, got a shot at a draft lottery position in the top 6. One thing with baseball is the draft is so big, and it's at a weird time, and it's just, I don't know. I think they could make a bigger deal of the draft. I think they could make the entry draft more of an event than what they do, which, again, speaking as a Canadian here, it's not really an event. I'll hear like days later, oh, in the 4th round, the Jays grabbed this guy, could be a steal. And I'm like, oh, the draft was a few days ago. So they don't make an event of it. I understand that with baseball too, I don't want to say there's more of a randomness to it, but it feels like there is. We'll see if the draft lottery increases, interest in that kind of thing. And then maybe, the draft gets more attention as well. And service time manipulation. There's going to be an attempt to prevent service time manipulation, which of course is teams making sure that a player doesn't have enough service time to become an unrestricted free agent for basically as long as possible. So we've seen guys being kept in AAA baseball when they should be in Major League Baseball because teams are like, hey, we don't want to put him in the majors because then we're going to lose, that year of service time, and then he's going to be a free agent a year sooner. So that's one thing that, again, and just the way this is phrased, hopefully there's something more concrete than just that. Just because, again, and we see this in all sports, really, where you want to control the players, control the player's destiny for as long as possible, where they're playing for you for as long as possible before they have 100% freedom to go wherever they want. And again, tying it back to hockey, I remember when hockey had to be 31. You had to have an exorbitant amount of time in the league. I think it was 10 years. And by the time guys were free agents, they were already on the downside of their career usually. So taking that control away from owners can be tough. And they'll fight you on that. And so there's going to be a joint committee next year that's going to take a look at the pitch clock, which I thought they'd agreed to. I was reading that they'd agreed to a pitch clock, but apparently not, according to this. Base size. Do not touch the size of the bases. Please don't. Please, for the love of everything, don't make the bases comically large. I mean, they're not going to shrink them. They were talking about making the bases bigger. Why? And again, if you guys can tell me why making a base bigger would make the game more entertaining, go for it. But I don't think it makes any difference to a fan enjoyment of a game. And I guess there's more of a chance than a guy trips rounding the bases, so that's funny. But that's not a reason to change the size of the base. Defensive positioning. So they were talking about banning the shift. I didn't see that they've actually banned the shift. I've always found positioning weird, and I've always thought it's kind of like you're picking on the guy. It's like, all right, the guy's up at the plate. All right, he tends to pull to the right. Okay, everybody go over where he normally pulls the ball. Oh, that's where I was going to hit it. There's nobody out there, but I don't hit that way. So, I don't know if they're going to be able to come up with some consensus on what should or shouldn't be allowed defensively by teams, right? So that'll be interesting. And then the idea of an auto, ball, or strike zone, which sounds great, right? Until the machine's wrong. Until something happens and it's incorrect. We now have the technology. You can track pretty darn near everything. So I'm sure you could have sensors where it automatically, a guy comes up to the plate and they're ready, and the plate knows, or whatever machine knows, where the shoulders and the knees are. I will say this: if you take that part out where the umpires are no longer making those calls of balls and strikes, you do lose something from the game. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm saying that you might be taking one of the few things that can really be entertaining during a game, like that called strike. You see that ball and you know it's off the plate, and you see the ump do that, like, you're out of here. And the guy freaks out, and then the manager comes out of comes out from the dugout and starts yelling and kicking sand and picking up the base and throwing it. You're taking that out. It's not like they're going to run up to a machine and start yelling at it. Now who's the machine? Machine. So that's four ball strike machines we've lost this week. All Lou Piniella. Where'd he come from? So really, this could absolutely take that conversation out of the game of who's got the bigger strike zone. But I kind of miss that. I remember watching games back in the 80s when I would watch baseball as much as hockey. And you'd be like, okay, this guy's calling the game. He's got a smaller strike zone. So pitchers have to be, make sure that they're exactly in the strike zone. This guy's got a very liberal strike zone, so they're going to have to swing at everything at the plate because we're not quite sure exactly what he's going to call. And of course, there are pitchers who will throw a pitch that we know is not a strike. I think the umpire knows it's not a strike. And because it's framed by the catcher that this is where we want it, and it's close enough, they would get the call. There have been plenty of pitchers where they'll get the benefit of the doubt. I remember that, again, watching baseball as much as I did. And so certain pitchers would earn sort of that liberal strike zone, which, again, I understand for people who are purists, they'd say, well, that shouldn't be a thing. But it made it entertaining to watch. Because, again, from one game to the next, you would see differences. So you might have a situation where Greg Maddux is going in, he can throw a ball wherever, and that's a strike. And the next game he has to be really precise because he knows the umpire behind the plate calls a really tight strike zone. So again, it's just one of those personality things, which while the NFL's trying to stomp out personality, I guess Major League Baseball might as well. The one thing I wonder is that Major League Baseball, which is it's a sport that doesn't appeal as much to the kids as other sports do. I don't know that these changes will fix any of that. I don't know that the joint competition committee is going to matter. I don't know that if you go up to a 17-year-old that really thinks the X Games are cool, that if you tell them, hey, listen, that snowboarding thing with all the loop-de-loops and everything is fun. Did you know that baseball's made the bases slightly bigger? You're not going to get the kid going, wow, really? Man, screw this snowboarding thing. I'm going to watch me some baseball. Hey, guys, the bases are bigger. And there's a universal DH rule. I think baseball needs to find a way to... The pitch clock makes sense for speeding up the game at least a little bit. They need to find a situation where, managers can micromanage into the ground whatever they want, and yet they have to do it in a way where it doesn't slow the game to an absolute crawl. It is so frustrating to be like, okay, I'm going to watch baseball, hockey's over. So it's June, July, that kind of thing, right? Usually hockey's not taking place during the summer. And I'll settle in to watch a game. I usually wait till about the 6th inning because it takes a while to get to the 6th inning. I'm like, all right, okay, that pitcher's out. That pitcher's coming in. That hitter's getting switched out. All right, so there's, fly ball. Okay, so one pitch and they're changing the pitcher again. And we got another pinch hitter, and it's been 20 minutes. It can be really tough to get through that. And baseball needs to figure out a way where the guys who are in charge of all of the advanced stats that definitely are pushing all of the buttons on when guys get pulled and who gets to hit against who, that it's not boring. And I don't know if there's a way to make it not boring. I really don't. And I'm somebody who watches curling, and I think curling's a lot of fun to watch. I watched a lot of it at the Olympics. Canada didn't do as well as they normally do at Olympics, but curling is still a lot of fun to watch. And it's not the most exciting sport, but I would probably watch curling over baseball most days. My favorite baseball games have always been the ones where they're pitching duels, and I'm thinking there's two reasons for that. One, I always wanted to be a pitcher. It's the one spot in baseball that I thought was great. Like, you were throwing that ball at 100 miles an hour, and the guy at the plate could absolutely drill you with that ball. And it happens. Pitchers get hit, and it's scary, and then they get back up, and then they throw more 90, 95 mile an hour pitches. That was the one thing that I always thought looked like fun with baseball was the pitching aspect of it, because I like the psychology, I like the strategy And so I mean I like that part of the game, but I think I also like pitching matchups where it's a duel because those games tend to be faster. So it's 3 up, 3 down, and switch. 3 up, 3 down, and switch. 3 up, 3. So while other people might be watching that and being like, man, I want to hit. I just want, I'm sitting there going, man, this guy's got 5 strikeouts. This guy's got 6 strikeouts. What's going to happen next inning? I'm really excited by this whole, like, oh, that was a great pitch. So I may be a different audience than a lot of normal baseball viewers, I guess. So that's the question I have for you. Do you prefer the pitching matchups where you get like a 1-0 game? And I mean, I know shutouts aren't really a thing for pitchers as much as they used to be, but I used to love it when I'd watch a pitcher get a complete game shutout and have like 12 strikeouts, and the guy on the other's team would have like 8 strikeouts and go 7 innings. Like, it's just, I kind of miss that kind of baseball. Or are you the type that goes, home runs are great, I want to see as many of them as possible, and if the game's 17-12, more the better. Again, my eyes kind of glass over when we're into those games because they take forever. They do tend to take forever. And I don't see a lot in here that necessarily speeds up the game, other than the pitch clock, which will be taken up by the Joint Committee next year. The Joint Committee could help because it's players, it's people representing management, it's having them work together. So baseball used to have it where they could just unilaterally make rule changes. Didn't matter what the players thought. Now the players will have an opinion. So it is in the players' best interest to make sure that the game is a little more appealing and a little less slow than what it's been for quite a while now. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.